Hello and welcome to another video on this channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video that's a little bit different, but kind of the same. And this week I'm going to be talking about how I read so many books in 2020. And it's based off a lot of conversations I've had with family and friends that have asked me exactly that question, especially because whilst I kind of do read a fair amount, most years I probably read between 20 and 30 books. 2020 was kind of an exponential growth curve in terms of how much I was reading. And 2020 was a bad year for so many reasons for so many people. But for reading, it was a very good year. According to Goodreads, last year I read 109 books, which is just over 2 books a week. And the reason why I'm making this video, because there are already so many videos on this topic on YouTube and some really good ones at that, is because most of them are about the individual's experience, and they're just doing it from their personal perspective. And it's good. From each video, you can take one or two different ideas to implement into your life, but they're not really backed up by anything. And we all read so differently, different styles and different types of books. So I want to do something that was a bit more grounded in science and in proven techniques to read more. So here are 5 ways you can read more in 2021. The first idea is the concept of anchoring. And this is taken from the field of behavioral economics, which looks at how and why people make decisions. And the concept of anchoring is that we rely heavily on the first piece of information that we're given. So the classic example is if you're bartering for, say, a jacket, and the first person that offers a number goes for 20, that's your anchor. Your point of reference is now set at 20, and you can go below it or you can go above it, but it's very unlikely that you'll go significantly below it or significantly above it. You're not going to say, oh, you've offered me 20, I'll give you 3. Like, that's not, you've already set the anchor. Where if they said, oh, this jacket's worth £5, then you might say 3, but because they've set that anchor, irrespective of what you previously thought the jacket was worth, you're now anchored at 20. And this can work in all types of situations, and you can use it for yourself to trick your brain into making decisions quickly and doing things without you having to think too much about it. And this is kind of perfectly summed up in the experience of a friend who in 2019 set a goal to read 52 books in a year, and came close, but was really rushing towards the end and didn't quite make it. And he's admitted himself that those last books weren't as deeply read as at the beginning of the year. But in 2020, they set themselves a new goal and raised that goal significantly. So they went for 100 books. And so they've changed their anchor. They've gone from 52, which would have been amazing, to 100, which is still an amazing amount of books to read. But because they've anchored themselves this much higher amount, they went past 52 books so quickly. Within half a year, they'd read 52 books, so they were well on their way. And this concept of anchoring can help you draw up your expectations for how much you're going to read. So the second piece of advice is to surround yourself with people that read a lot. This is based on the idea that you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, and by surrounding yourself with people that read a lot means that you have all of these mental cues, you're seeing them read a lot, you're hearing them talk about books, and you're also embedding that habit, which is crucial, much, much faster. And this can be both in person or virtually. So the one ways that I've done it is by replacing Facebook and Instagram with Goodreads. Having Goodreads, the reading app, as my default social media of choice, so the one that I'll scroll through randomly in the morning. This means I'm constantly finding people that read a lot more than I do. There are people on Goodreads that read 300 books in a year, like it's insane. And you're constantly finding books that you're excited to read. And another part of this is after you've finished a book, reward yourself. Watch the movie or the television adaptation. What I like to do is listen and read to interviews with the author, and that gives you more information that when you're then next talking about that book, you can bring that in, and it becomes a much more enjoyable conversation if you know why the author wrote it and how they wrote it. The third tip is to choose which book to read at what time. You can divide your day up into when you have motivation and when you don't. So you tend to have a circadian rhythm that dictates the energy peaks and the energy troughs throughout your day, and you need to match up when you're feeling motivated and when you're energized to the type of book you're going to read. So in the morning, when I've just woken up and I've just had my first coffee of the day, I'm feeling ready to take on the day. And so I'll read something more challenging, maybe some non-fiction or something for my university degree. Whereas in the afternoon, let's say at 3 p.m. when I've done a morning's worth of work, I've had lunch, I'm kind of feeling a bit full and a bit groggy, then maybe I'll listen to an Audible book, or I'll read something light and non-fiction. That way, by matching up when you have motivation, you're going to be maximizing the time that you're reading, but also you're going to find yourself less in those situations where you're tired and you're reading a non-fiction book, or you're reading some heavy ancient fiction and your eyes are just glazing past and you're not taking it in, and you get to the end of the page and you think, I didn't read any of that, and you throw it away thinking, oh, the author didn't grab me, or this book is crap, or actually it was just because you were reading it at the wrong time of the day. The fourth tip, and it kind of ties into the accountability thing, is publish your goals online, or tell your friends and family about what you're planning to achieve. Goodreads has a great function where you can show how many books you're going to read in that year, and it will split it up for you to let you know whether you're falling behind or if you're ahead of your target. And don't start it by saying, oh, I'm going to read 100 books in a year. That's a big goal. Instead say, okay, for January, I'm going to read 8 books in a month. And that means that you're much more likely to hit that goal, and you have an instant reward. It's only 30 days. And when you hit that 8th book, you're going to feel even more motivated to then do the next month. And then you can continually work your way upwards, so that by the time half the year is gone, 100 doesn't seem that far off. And the final tip is more of a debate, really. On the world of YouTube, especially on BookTube, there are these two ideas about how you can read more. And the much larger camp believe that you should read whenever you can. Fit in 5-minute, 10-minute chunks when you wake up, when you have breakfast, when you're commuting, when you go to the toilet. Like, all these small chunks of time, when they're added together throughout the day, can add up to a lot. So you end up reading a lot faster. So it means that you get the quantity and hit the goal that you want. The second camp, which is definitely smaller, really take offense to that idea and think that you should set aside, say, an hour a day, like a specific sizable chunk of time, and that's when you should read. And you should read deeply, and you should read without interruption. And this means you'll still get the quantity, but it's a lot harder to motivate yourself to read for an hour a day. That's a long time to set aside technology, to set aside talking to your friends and family, and just read. And that habit can be incredibly hard to keep up. So each side has their benefits and drawbacks. When you're reading for 10 minutes a day, there's no way you're going to be keeping up with the plot, with the character development, or with the concepts that you're trying to learn about. Whereas when you read for an hour a day, you're embedded in that story, or you're embedded in the concepts for so much longer that you're really going to keep it ingrained within you. And really, what I'd want to add to this debate is that it's not a debate. It's a false dichotomy. The people that strongly stick to each camp, they're doing it for the wrong reasons. They think that is the one way to read. Well, it's not. There are so many different ways to read, and you need to find a balance that's right for you. And for me, I do both. When I only have 5 or 10 minutes, I'll listen to a light audiobook, like a real page turner. Whereas when I have an hour and I think, okay, this is the time I'm going to sit down and finally read Jane Austen, or I'm finally going to read Wordsworth. You need to fit the type of reading you're doing into the time you have, and so tailor what you're reading accordingly. So they were the 5 tips that I have to read more. Using these tips helped me achieve the goal that I wanted to read over 100 books in a single year. But finally, I would like to say that the goal is somewhat arbitrary, and to say you've read 100 books means nothing if you haven't taken anything from those books, and if you haven't learned something, or at least enjoyed them. There are so many times in 2020 when I was sick of reading and I pushed myself to keep on reading to ingrain that habit. And in 2021, I don't plan on doing that. I'm planning on reading a lot less books, but reading books that really jump out to me, irrespective of whether they're 100 pages or 700 pages. So hopefully you can take this advice, but take it with a grain of salt and realize that whilst it's useful to set goals, really what matters is that you're enjoying what you're reading and you're taking something from it.